2017-2018 class number 18. We're going to be discussing Purim, as Purim starts this Wednesday night. Okay, so actually there are five mitzvos that we have on Purim. The first one is to hear the Megillah on Wednesday night. The second one is to hear the Megillah on Thursday day. The third mitzvah is to give at least 2 kosher food items to another friend. Okay. The fourth one is to give gifts to the poor, to monetary gifts to poor people, and I'm happy to help anybody who wants to fulfill this mitzvah. Give me the money and I'll hand it out on Purim. And then the fifth one is to make sure you have a meal on Purim. And then as well, everyone is invited on Thursday, on Thursday evening, I think around 6:30. Everyone's invited to Orah Torah to join us in the sort of the end of Purim, as Purim sort of ebbs away, to a Purim party where we'll be dancing and just celebrating as Purim winds down. Okay, so and if anyone needs a place, let me know. I know Rabbi is having a public Purim party at Orah Torah, and Data of Plano is also having a public Purim party that you could go and you could participate in the party as well. So, since you all know about Purim, so I decided that this week we would discuss the story of Purim, because I'm not sure that you all got the story straight. Okay, so we're going to talk about the Purim story. It's found in your regular Chumashim, regular stone Chumashim. If you turn to page 1252, and 1252 is where the Purim story begins. Okay, page 1252. Okay, does anyone want to let's just kind of just thumbnail sketch the story of Purim? Go ahead.
It is when Queen Esther intervened so that all the Jews weren't massacred. I can't remember his name, but he was upset with her uncle, who was her caretaker, because he wouldn't bow to him at the gate.
Okay, Haman was upset with Mordecai.
Yes,
right.
So Haman wanted to kill him when he found out he was a Jew, and he decided to kill all the Jews in the land. So he built this gallows, and then when the king was restless one night and couldn't sleep, he asked his court person to read back all the deeds, and he heard about Mordecai. And he asked if Mordecai had ever been rewarded, and he said no. So he asked Haman, what would you do if someone ever were to be a great person and the king wanted to reward him? And he would say, I would put him in the king's royal robes and prance him around on his royal horses, thinking he was talking about himself. And when he found out it was Mordecai he was talking about, he was upset. But Queen Esther, she couldn't approach the king because no one could, or it would be death. But she did risk her own life and asked everyone to fast with her for 3 days, all the Jews in the land, and she invited the king to a feast. He asked what she wanted, but she didn't ask. She invited him to another feast. He asked again, but she didn't ask. And then on the third feast, she told him what was going on and asked to help save the Jews. And because of the actions of Mordecai, he decided to help and ordered for Haman to actually be hung on his own gallows.
Okay. Good. Okay, so that's a rough thumbnail sketch, good enough for our purposes tonight. So let me ask you all a question. Page 1252 in the Chumash with the story of Purim. So, how long did the whole story take?
9 or 10 years.
Anyone else?
That's a good question.
How long did the story take?
The way it's written, it looks like it's very compressed and took place over days.
Right,
But
good,
it wasn't,
okay.
Because right at the outset, where it was 3 years into Ahasuerus' reign, and he had this big feast,
Right.
Which Mordecai counseled don't go to.
Right, okay, good, right. So it's in year 3 of his reign. Right, okay, so how many years does Ahasuerus reign?
At least it was many years, but he during this period, it didn't happen right immediately. I mean, there was a gap in time.
Right, okay, good, very good. So this is a long story, right? The story actually takes place over 14 years. Okay, 14. Okay, right. So actually, it starts because the story picks up the third year of Achashverosh's reign. He makes his big party, right? And then then it heats up by year number 14. Haman is dead. The Jews making a party. And how long does Achashverosh live after the party? After the end of the Megillah? Not long. He dies the following year. Why does he die the following year? No. Why does he die? He dies because he no longer is needed. Remember, the entire world, understand world history from the Jewish perspective. Right? God has a plan for the Jewish people. All the nations of the world are a pawn in that plan. Okay? And God moves them around to when they're there. If you take a look actually, right, how many exiles have the Jewish people been through? 4, right? We're in our 4th one now. But if you take a look in world history, Nebuchadnezzar, what are the four exiles that the Jewish people have been in? Babylonia, Greece, Roman,
and the modern current one.
No, we're Roman.
We're Roman.
Persian. Okay, right? So it's a Persian, right? So it's really, just to put them in order, it's the Babylonian exile, the Persian exile, the Greek exile, and then now the Roman exile. Those are the 4 exiles. Today we're still in Roman exile. If you take a look, right, Nebuchadnezzar, who is the head of Babylonia, right, which is modern day Iraq, by the way, when the head of Babylonia destroyed the temple, and then what happened to him soon after he destroyed the temple? He went bye-bye, right? He was gone. And then you had the Persian king. Right? Again, the Jewish people are in exile. And how long are they in exile for? The story takes place. As soon as the story ends, what happens to Persia? They disappear. Okay, then you come get the Greeks. And then the Greeks are the story of Hanukkah. And then how long does that last for? The story of Hanukkah ends, and what happens? The Greeks go bye-bye, and along comes the Romans. Right? So every nation in the world is here just as one of God's pawns, right, to go ahead and to interact with the Jewish people. The Jewish people get a test, either pass it or fail it miserably, or pass it wonderfully, right? And then off we go on to the next country.
Is there a reason the exile took so long?
Absolutely. The reason Roman exile took so long and why we are still in it today is the reason the Romans came and were able to destroy the Second Temple was for a very simple reason. We did not learn to treat, right, it's called sinas chinam, hatred of a fellow Jews. And since we have hatred for our fellow Jews at that point in time, right, we lost the temple. God said, if you can't learn to treat other Jews properly, right, I can't dwell among you. Baseless hatred. And as soon as you fix that, the temple could become back. And so far it's taken us 1940 or 1950 years and counting, and we are still being just as miserable to each other as we were when the temple was destroyed.
That's it.
Maybe worse. Right now, all we have to do is very simple. We want to end this exile. We want to go back to Israel, build the 3rd temple. All we got to do is unify and learn to treat each other properly. Okay. So now I want to read the first few sentences in the Megillah because I think the first few sentences are very, very important. Okay. Chapter 1, verse 1, page 1252. Peter, why don't you read for us?
In English.
In English, and please read loud so all our people that are watching us can hear you as well.
And it came to pass in the days of Ahasuerus, the Ahasuerus who reigned from Hodu to Cush over 127 provinces, that in those days when King Ahasuerus sat on his royal throne, which was in Shushan, the capital, in the 3rd year of his reign, he made a feast for all his officials and his servants, the army of Persia and Media, the nobles and officials of the provinces being present. When he displayed the riches of his glorious kingdom and the splendor of his excellent majesty for many days, 180 days, and when these days were fulfilled, the king made a week-long feast for all the people who were present in Shushan, the capital, great and small alike, in the court of the garden of the king's palace.
Okay. So question for you. So he goes ahead, and how long does he make his party for?
180 days.
180 days. Why is he making a 180-day party? He liked to drink. Yeah, so I don't want to make a party. He could drink more if he's all by himself.
One for each land, one for each country that he governed.
No, he governed 127 provinces. So why is he making a party in the third year of his reign, a 180-day party? And here we begin to open up the Pandora's box. My friends, I'm about to take you on a journey that will blow your minds. Glad you're here. Okay, so why is he making a 180-day party?
Show off his wealth.
To show off his wealth. Right? And every day he would open up a new treasure house. That's how wealthy he was. He ruled the world. Pretty impressive. 180-day party. So this 180-day party that he made was the party for his inauguration. Inaugural ball. And he made a 180-day party. Now, the question is as follows. The Jewish people, right, throughout the story, they go ahead and they have this huge feast. Kosher food and all. Now, what?
No kosher food, right?
Absolutely,
No,
it was
they had
kosher.
food for the Jews.
It was kosher food. Underneath, and you know who was the mashgiach? Mordechai.
Oh, boy. Okay.
Okay, he was the kosher food. So the sages asked the following question. I'm going to come back to this in 1 second. The sages asked the following question: what did the Jews do to deserve to be destroyed? And then, what did the Jews do to not to be destroyed? Right? What did they do in order to go ahead and to be saved? Okay, again, remember the two questions. What did they do that they deserve to be destroyed? And what did they do to deserve to be saved?
Well, they allowed themselves to be brought back to idolatry by the king. I mean, they were tempted to come back when they were told not to. Mordechai understood that they shouldn't be at that feast, and that it was a question of let's kind of the old school versus the new school. Mordechai recognizing what happened in the past, and people then saying, well, you know, this is a political issue. Let's make amends with the king and be part of the group.
Okay, so if you would have listened to Taylor when she told us the story, she said that Haman got angry at Mordechai because Mordechai wouldn't bow down to him, and therefore he decided to take revenge not just on Mordechai, but to take revenge on all the Jewish people. Now,
wasn't Ahasuerus known to hate the Jews to begin with?
So it's very interesting, right? So the Talmud actually has a discussion whether Ahasuerus was just a fool or an anti-Semite. Right? It goes back and forth into those two things. I think it's pretty clear. And I'll tell you the point where it comes to me, where you see that it really is an anti-Semite, is that because when Haman offers to pay the king an exorbitant amount of money to kill the Jews, right? Ahasuerus says, "I don't need it. Keep your money. Just kill the Jews." Right? And so that's, I think, really telling about Ahasuerus. What is fascinating is you hear the story, you read, and you say, okay, it's Mordechai's fault. And the Talmud says 180 degrees. The Talmud says the people who went to the party where Mordechai said you're not allowed to go, at that point those are the people that went ahead. That's why they got punished, because they went to this party. And which is a crazy idea. I mean, she's saying, what's wrong with this party? Why did the Jewish people going to do, right? What did they do that was so bad that deserved to be killed, right? That deserved to be killed for going to this party.
But the king was trying to tempt them back tempt them away from Torah and back to idolatry, wasn't he?
How?
Well, first for them to assimilate.
Okay.
And once they assimilate, they would then worship idols.
So like this, okay. But the king really, okay, let's understand why the king, and again, fascinating, what did the Jews do in order to be in order to be saved, right? What did they do in order to be saved?
They repented
They got together.
and went back to Torah.
They repented. It's very interesting. They repented. And what did they do?
They got together and prayed.
They got together.
Yeah.
Okay? Yeah.
The history goes in the. I studied history, but the history goes way back. I think during the Jacob time that someone had two sons, something like that, and then.
Okay. No.
I forget the.
Yeah, okay. So let's go along this. Listen to this. This is an amazing story. So the question is, you have to ask, what is the king doing making a party 3 days, right, 3 years into his reign? Doesn't it make sense that he should make the party, right, that he should make the party when he's, right, when, as soon as he goes ahead, and as soon as he becomes king? Why is he making his inauguration ball when he goes ahead and he 3 years into his reign? Not only that, right, the Megillah tells us that he took in vessels from the temple. Okay, he took in vessels from the temple, from the Jewish temple. He took them out, and in the middle of this ball, he's going in and he's having all the vessels of the temple out there, and they have all this stuff going on at it, this grand ball. Remember, a lot of drinking, a lot of women, right? There was it was not a very kosher ball. The food might have been kosher, but not too much else that was kosher there. Okay? And what happens is he's at this party. Right? But why is he making the 3rd year of his reign?
Because the 70 years have been.
So very interesting. So what happened was like this. Everyone knew when Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylonia, came and destroyed the temple, everybody knew. The Jewish prophet, right, I think Isaiah, had prophesied that the exile was going to last for 70 years. It was going to last for 70 years, and then after 70 years, at that point in time, right, the Jewish people were going to go back. And what happened was, according to Achashverosh's calculations, the 70 years, when he became king, he became in year 69. So he waited. So he said, I'm going to make a party that I'm ruling the world. When the Jewish people are going to go back and build their temple, that ain't happening. So he didn't make a party. Comes year 69. Come year 70. And the Jewish people don't go back. Come year 71. And what does Achashverosh say? Achashverosh says, the Jewish God is dead. He said he was going to take the Jewish people back after 70 years. Comes year number 70. We're now in year 71. The Jewish God is dead. So we're going to make a party. A huge party. Because now I will rule the land forever. Right? I will be, right, I'm king and I will rule the land forever. And at that point in time, I'll be king. Right? The Jewish God will never come back. Jewish subjects, come and partake in my royal party. Mordechai says he can't go. The leaders of the Jewish community tell Mordechai, Rabbi, what do you know about politics? Right? This is politics. The king invites us. We got to go to the party. We're not going to like it. It's going to be bad, but the king's inviting us. When the king invites you, you show up. And what does Mordechai says? Mordechai says, a party celebrating the death of God is idolatry in its highest form. A Jew has to be willing to give up his life, and even if it means that they will kill us, we cannot go to the party. What do the Jewish people do? They go to the party. They go to the party. Says the Talmud, this is the reason why the Jewish people deserve to be destroyed. Now, I want to read you a fascinating story out of the book of Daniel. In the book of Daniel, right, which is one of the 24 books of the Torah, book of Daniel, chapter 5. This is not the first time that a person had made the mistake of thinking that God had died. It takes us, what happened was, Nebuchadnezzar, when he died, was succeeded by his son, Evil Merodach. Okay? Evil Merodach reigned for 23 years. Evil Merodach ruled for 23 years, and he was succeeded by his son, Belshazzar, who reigned for 3 years. Okay? You got it? And it's bringing us now to the 3rd year of the reign of Belshazzar. Okay? We call it, right, Nebuchadnezzar's grandson. And I'm going to read you the story. Everyone, please listen up. King Belshazzar made a great feast for 1,000 of his nobles, and drank wine before the 1,000 guests. While under the influence of wine, Belshazzar gave an order to bring the golden and silver vessels that Nebuchadnezzar, his grandfather, had removed from the sanctuary that was in Jerusalem. Okay, right? His grandfather had, and for the last 52 years, all these vessels from the temple were lying in the storage house with a big warning sign on it, don't touch. Belshazzar goes ahead and Belshazzar says, take them out. Rip through the red tape. It makes no difference anymore. Right? We're going to go ahead, we're going to have the party. For the king, and who did he want these gold and silver vessels for? He wanted them, they should be removed from his sanctuary for the king and his nobles, his consorts and his concubines, to drink from them. Okay, they're bringing all these vessels, right, to go to give, to drink, to this big orgy he's having. Again, in the 3rd year of his reign. So they brought the golden vessels that they had removed from the sanctuary, the temple of God in Jerusalem. And the king, his nobles, his consorts, and his concubines drank from them. They drank wine and praised the gods of gold and silver, copper, iron, wood, and stone. Can you imagine? Belshazzar is making this huge party, 1,000 right, high-ranking officials. And he says, go bring out the vessels from the temple, from God's temple in Jerusalem. He's having this orgy going on. Just then, fingers of a human hand came forth and wrote on the plasters of the wall of the king's palace, facing the candelabrum. And the king saw the palm of the hand that was writing. You heard the story? You ever hear the story about the handwriting on the wall?
Yeah.
You ever heard the story, right? Don't you see the handwriting on the wall? This is the source of it. But if you could imagine, he's having this huge party, right? Orgy. And all of a sudden this hand, just a hand, appears. And the hand begins writing on the wall.
Pretty scary.
I would be in my pants. Okay? Well, Belshazzar's a tough dude. Remember, he's ruling the world. Right? What does Belshazzar do? The king's appearance therefore changed, and his thoughts bewildered him. The belt around his waist opens, and his knees knocked, one against the other.
Wow.
The king cried aloud to bring in the astrologers, the Chaldean and the Demonists. The king exclaimed to the sages of Babylonia, that any person who would read this writing and tell its interpretation would wear royal purple with a chain of gold on his neck and would rule 1/3 of the kingdom. The king is desperate to know what is the writing, and the people are trying to figure out what it says. Verse number 8, then all the king's sages came in, but they could not read the writing and make its interpretation known to the king. Then King Belshazzar was greatly bewildered, and his appearance changed upon him, and his nobles were confounded. As a consequence of the words of the king and his nobles, the queen came into the banquet hall. The queen exclaimed and said, may the king live forever. Do not be bewildered, nor let your appearance be changed. There is a man in your kingdom, in whom is the spirit of the holy God, and in your grandfather's days, brilliance, understanding, and wisdom, like the wisdom of God, were found in him. And King Nebuchadnezzar, your grandfather, made him chief of the necromancers, astrologers, Chaldeans, stargazers, and demonists. Since extraordinary spirit, intelligence, understanding, interpreting the dreams, solving of riddles, and resolving the difficulties have been found in Daniel, who the king had named Belteshazzar, let Daniel now be called, and he will relate the interpretation. Right? So, right? You understand what's going on? Big orgy, and hand comes, writes down, all of a sudden the king's knees start knocking, fishing in his pants. Right? Stop the music. Hold the horses, right? What's going on here? And they go ahead, and what do? They go ahead and they call, right? They go ahead and they call, right? He doesn't know what to do. Called in all this, right? Brings in all the hired help, and what happens? Nothing. So along comes the queen, kind of prancing on in, and what does she say? Let the king live forever, right? That we're going to go ahead and we're going to resolve this for you because there's a great man in the kingdom named Daniel, and we're going to get from Daniel. We're going to get the straight scoop on what this means. Right? You ever heard the famous story of Daniel in the lion's den? Mm-hmm. That's this Daniel. Okay? Right, by the way, this is one of the stories that what happened was that he became so powerful, all the other king's advisors, right, ganged up and wanted to kill Daniel. So they convinced the king to throw Daniel into the lion's den. The king doesn't want to, but he kind of gets no choice, and he goes ahead and he puts Daniel into the lion's den. Right? And nice hungry lions, and the lions look up, and Daniel comes into the cave, and what do? They
kiss his
yawn. Right? Right?
They didn't kiss his feet.
And kiss his feet, kiss his head.
Yeah.
Right? And so what happens is, so Daniel says to the king, okay, let me know how long you want me to stay here for. And the king says, haul him up, let him climb out. And then all his lovely advisors that had convinced him to throw Daniel into the lion's den, the king said to them, well, maybe the lions aren't so hungry. Why don't you go down and check it out? And he had all the advisors that tried to throw Daniel to the lions go down, and the lions just made short work of them, and they were gone. Yeah, that's the story. An amazing story. Okay, but that's just Daniel. So anyway, so let Daniel be called. Then Daniel was brought before the king. The king spoke up and said to Daniel, you are Daniel from among the people of the exiles of Judah, whom the king, my grandfather, brought from Judah. I have heard about you that the Spirit of God is in you, and that brilliance, understanding, and extraordinary wisdom are found in you. The sages, the astrologers, are now brought before me to read the writing and make its interpretation known to me, but they cannot tell the interpretation of the matter. But I have heard about you that you are able to provide interpretations and to resolve difficulties. Now, if you be able to read the writing and make its interpretation known to me, you will wear royal purple with a chain of gold on your neck, and you will rule 1/3 of the kingdom. Daniel then replied and said to the king, let your gifts remain yours, and give your rewards to others. But I will read the writing for the king and make its interpretation known for him. Daniel said to the king, don't need your favors, sir. Thank you. Give them to whoever you want. You, O king, the supreme God, gave kingship, greatness, honor, and majesty to Nebuchadnezzar, your grandfather. And because of the greatness that he gave him, all the peoples, nations, and languages used to tremble and be frightened before him. Whomever he wished he would kill, and whomever he wished he would keep alive. Whomever he wished he would raise up, and whomever he wished he would put down. But then his heart grew proud, and his spirit was hardened to rebel. He was deposed from his royal throne, and honor was taken from him. He was driven from mankind, and his heart was made like a beast's. His dwelling was with wild asses, and they fed him grass like oxen. And his body was washed with the dew of heaven, until he recognized that the supreme God rules over the kingdom of men, and that whomever he wishes, he appoints over it. Okay, so just give you a little side story. After Nebuchadnezzar, right, he was the Babylonian king who destroyed the temple, he began to think he was greater than God. Now that's a big mistake. And what happened was, right, he became a proud S.O. So God went ahead. And God made him go crazy. And he thought he was an animal. And for 7 years, King Nebuchadnezzar, the ruler of the world, lived in a stable, lived out in the fields, with the other animals of his kingdom. No clothing, because animals don't wear clothing. He was washed with the dew of the heavens, and he ate grass with all his other animals, because he was too proud of himself, not recognizing it was all from God.
He lost his kingdom and became.
No. He lost it. He was an animal. Right? He turned himself into an animal. And then after 7 years, he figured it out. He did tshuva, right? And then he was allowed to return to living like a human being. Now, says Daniel, but you, his grandson Belshazzar, did not humble your heart, although you knew all this. You had a lesson, you had a chance, and you didn't pay attention. It's a very bad thing to do. You exalted yourself against the Lord of heavens, and the vessels of his house were brought before you, and you, your nobles, your consorts, and your concubines drank wine from them, and you praised the gods of silver and gold, copper, iron, wood, and stone, which do not see, nor hear, nor know. But the God in whose hand is your soul, and to whom all your ways belong, you did not glorify. Thus the palm of a hand was sent from before him, God, and it inscribed this writing. This is the writing that was inscribed. Mine tekal uparsin. 4 words. This is interpretation of the matter. Mine counted. God has counted the years of your kingship and terminated it. Tekel, weighted. You have been weighed in the scales and found wanting. Perez, broken up. Your kingdom has been broken and given to Media and Persia. Then Belshazzar gave the command, and they clothed Daniel in royal purple with a chain of gold on his neck. And they proclaimed about him that he would rule 1/3 of the kingdom. That very night, Belshazzar, the Chaldean king, was slain. That was the last time these smart Alecs took out the vessels from the temple. See, Nebuchadnezzar, after he went and turned into an animal for 7 years, he finally figured it out. And so he says, do not touch the vessels from the temple. We looted them, but put a lot of red tape around them with lots of danger symbols on it. Belshazzar says, okay, we wait 70 years. He miscounted. And he thought the 70 years were up. God had not taken the Jewish people back. And so therefore he says, we can take out the vessels. They go ahead and they took out the vessels. And that night, he was killed. And the kingdom of Babylonia was terminated. And the kingdom of Persia and Media became the rulers over the world, taking over from Belshazzar. Fast forward. Comes to our story, the story of Achashverosh. He goes ahead.
Sounds like the same story.
It's the same. It is. It's the same exact story. He counts 3 years, right? And he goes ahead. Right? There's a king in between, right? But he goes ahead, and he becomes king. Okay, he goes ahead, and he becomes king, and he goes ahead, and he becomes king, right? He becomes king, and he thinks, according to his countings, that he's got only 2 years to rule, because nobody's betting against God, right? They now had 2 examples, right? They had example A was Nebuchadnezzar, example B was Belshazzar. right? So right, because remember, because when Nebuchadnezzar, right, right, he ruled from 3319 to 3363, right? That was Nebuchadnezzar, right? He ruled for 44 years. He's the one that destroyed Jerusalem. Okay, after he destroyed Jerusalem, right, he ruled another 10, 20, 24, 25 years. Then you had even Merodach, right, who then ruled from 3363 to 3386, right? He ruled another 23 years. Okay? Then you had Belshazzar, who ruled for 3 years, was the last of the Babylonian kings. Then you had Darius the Mede. Okay, Darius, right, the Mede, okay?
Darius the first.
Darius the first, we call Darius the first. And he ruled for 2 years. Okay, and he defeated Belshazzar. He then had a son, Cyrus, that ruled for 3 years. Okay? And then you had Achashverosh, right, he ruled for 14 years. Okay, and then his son, right, Darius II, Darius the Persian, right, so then he authored the temple's completion.
Darius II is Esther's son.
Esther's son, right, then he ruled for 35 years. Okay, that's the timeline. Again, Nebuchadnezzar destroyed the first temple, right, after destruction of the first temple, right, he ruled for roughly 23, 24 years. Then you had even Merodach ruled for another 23 years, right, so that's 46 years. Belshazzar ruled for 3 years, that's 49. Darius the Mede for 2 years, it's 51. Cyrus for 3 years is 54. Achashverosh for 14 years, which is 67. And then Darius comes in and he rules, right, and lets the Jewish people go back. But they had twice. They took out, right, so now Nebuchadnezzar became crazy. Belshazzar is the one who took out the vessels from the temple. Gets killed, done. Right, the Persian media, the Babylonian Empire is done. Right, the Medo-Persian Empire takes over. Right, takes over from the Babylonian Empire, and they now rule. Now, welcome to the story of the Megillah. So the Megillah picks up that Achashverosh was king for 3 years. He was a king for 3 years, and what does he see? What is he saying? It's all gone.
60 years up.
Right? 70 years are up. Right? It's the 3rd year of his reign. God hasn't taken the Jewish people back. You see all that red tape with the bomb signatures and skulls on it, right? With the crosses on it, don't touch. He says, not a problem anymore. He says, break it open. Bring out the vessels. Dum 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 dum. And that's how our Megillah begins. He's making this 180-day party, and he's taking out the vessels from the temple. That's why, if you when you hear the Megillah being read, okay, right, there's a special tune on how the Megillah is read. Right, it goes, Vayehi. When it talks about, you'll notice that, like, by verse number, in verse number, it said, okay, it says, okay, in verse number 7, it says, Vashkos b'chlei zahav, right? Vashkos b'chlei zahav, those are golden vessels. But then it says, V'kelim, Mikelim shonim, right? We switched to the tune of Lamentations. Because V'kelim are vessels, from different vessels, that is code word for the temple. And therefore we switch to the tune of Lamentations at that point in time. Okay? So we have, right, from the vessels, right from the temple. He takes them out. What happens when you take out the vessels of the temple and you're not supposed to? Bad news. Bad karma. Right? Right? And who's gonna get it this time? Okay. Right? Okay, and that's the story. Isaac, what's the question?
The vessels? Were they?
Vessels, gold, silver, goblets.
Looted or what?
What? They were looted, yeah. When they destroyed the temple, they took out all the gold and silver. right, and took it back to Babylonia. Nebuchadnezzar was smart enough to keep it under lock and key, right? But then he became too haughty, so then he went nuts. And then when he kind of went ahead and
It's not the same. That's what we're talking about, where the 5 books of Moses were in the tabernacle.
No. Right. So in the temple, remember in the tabernacle, right? It talks about different vessels and talks about then, right? So not remember, Yoshiyahu Melech, before the first temple was destroyed, hid a few of the vessels. And they took some of those vessels, but there was a tremendous amount of bowls and cups and goblets that were used in the temple. So all those.
And the 5 books, where they end up at?
No. So they ended up. So they were in the temple, in the tabernacle. Right, and the Torah talks about the tabernacle. They went to the temple, and then they got looted by Babylonia. Babylonia took them, and then Belshazzar, right? The story read in the book of Daniel. He goes ahead and he then takes those vessels and uses them and during his orgy. Right? They didn't put them under lock and key until the time of Achashverosh. Achashverosh makes his party, right? And now he does the same thing. A carbon copy of Belshazzar. Right? He goes ahead and he pulls out the vessels. But this is already times 2. Right? So God always gives us the first time he does something kind of to wake you up. Once you do the second time, you don't get the same warning as Belshazzar did. Right? Because Achashverosh still had a role to play. Right? So God's going to keep Achashverosh alive. But what does Achashverosh lose for doing this? His wife. He murders his queen. Vashti. Right? There's death. Right? By taking it, he doesn't die. He kills his queen Vashti. Right? One of the 4 most beautiful women to ever walk the planet.
Wasn't she descended from somebody like? She was from Haman's family.
No, she was Vashti. Vashti was Nebuchadnezzar's
Nebuchadnezzar's daughter.
Granddaughter, whatever. Right? Why? What is God? What is? Okay, we'll get to that. We'll get to the story. Right. Now, the real reason is because we had to make room for Esther. Right? Now, the real reason is because they took out the vessels from the temple. And when you take out the vessels from the temple, bad things happen. Right? Bad things happen, bad people. And so now, right, when that happens, right, when it goes ahead and those things go away, right? Those things go away. But remember, God has a plan. Right? Vashti has to disappear. Why does Vashti have to disappear? So Esther can appear.
Yeah.
Right? Okay.
It's God's plot.
It's God's plot.
Rabbi, forgive me the part that pertains. So for the 5 books of Moses, where did they end up at?
The 5 books of Moses, right, close with the Jewish people about to go into the land of Israel. Which, if you want to think about it in terms how long that is, it's 950 years before the story. Okay, right? The Torah ended 950 years, right? The chronological of 950 years. Remember, the Jews entered the land of Israel, right? They go into the desert, right? And the 40 years in the desert, right? And the Torah ends the 40 years in the desert. Once the 40 years in the desert, then you go ahead and then you have 850 years ago in Israel till they were kicked out by Nebuchadnezzar. Okay, no, so 900 years. And so then 910 years, 920 years that they go ahead and now that's the story of Purim is taking place. Okay, so and that 920 year period is covered by the Nach, right? By the prophets and sacred writings. Right? They go ahead and that sort of chronologically tells us the story of the Jews going to the land of Israel, right? This book of Joshua, right? Judges, Samuel, Kings.
But the tabernacle, the Bible, the 5 books.
Yeah. It stops right before the Jewish people enter into the land of
He's
Israel.
asking, where's the ark? Where's the ark?
Oh, where's the ark at this point in time? The ark has been hidden. The Jewish people have Torahs, right? And we're using, but the ark itself was hidden by King, right, Yoshiyahu before the destruction of the first temple.
Yeah.
Where? What? Where?
Where? That's a great question. Everyone can take bets where it is. Some people think it's in the Vatican. But Yoshiyahu Melech hid it in the tunnels that we don't know where it is. We'll find it when it comes time for Mashiach. And that's when we'll go ahead and that's when we'll find it. So it's hidden someplace.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that was not one of the vessels that were taken out.
That wasn't what the vessel taken by Nebuchadnezzar.
That's what
They
he
get
was
closer.
worried
This
about.
world, they just discover more and more.
They just discovered, right, Isaiah's,
Eliezer.
right? And isn't Isaiah's signature ring? I think something like that. Okay, whatever. That's the thing, maybe his personal signature ring. Kind of, right, defining you more and more. It's kind of pretty cool. Okay, so now, because I love it, for all the people that say, oh no, it never happened, this is all like a dream.
Right.
Anytime they find another piece, like I feel like calling them up and saying, you paying attention to the news lately? You might want to turn on your TV and kind of check this thing out. You know, you're gonna have to redo all your ridiculous things you said. You might have to change your mind about it. And so anyway, so that kind of is so that's what we're up to. So 3 years now. One of the things that is truly fascinating about the Megillah, how many books are there in the written Torah?
5 books, but
The
there's
most-
24
There's 5 books in the
No, Taylor, say that again. There are 5 books in the Chumash, but there are 24 books. Okay, there are 24 books that make up our written Torah. Okay, 24 books that make up our written Torah.
Okay. 5 and then 24. So what is this over here?
But you're reading this is part of the book of Esther is one of the
No. This book.
Chumash. The Chumash is 5 books.
Into one.
What? Yeah, it's put into one. Yeah.
So the 24. How many pages is this?
How many pages is a Chumash?
The complete 24. How many pages?
This book here is a complete 24 books.
Tanakh.
That's the Tanakh.
The Tanakh.
The Tanakh is a 24. The Tanakh that stands for stands for Torah. The Na of Nach stands for Nevi'im, the prophets, and the Ch stands for Kesuvim, sacred writings. So the Tanakh stands for the 5 books of the Torah. The Nevi'im, the prophets, stand for 8 books of the prophets, and then there are right. That's 8 plus 5 is 13, and then there's 11 books in the sacred writings.
So the one that we read in the Bet Knesset is
That's the Torah. Those are 5 books of the Torah.
So 5, 24 into 1.
In the Beit Knesset, it's right in the synagogue. The Torah scroll has 5 books in it.
That 5 is divided by 24.
No. Then there's another 18 books that are not in that scroll.
So why we don't do that in the Bet Knesset? Why we don't?
And so the answer is, so some of it we do. The prophets we read from the prophets at the end of on Saturday morning, right? What's called the Haftorah, right? So that's taken
So
from.
that's divided between Haftorah and everything else.
And then that's sacred writings, and then these ksuvim. So the book of Esther is read on the holiday of Purim.
So God gave the 5 books to Moses.
Correct.
The 24 came afterwards.
Ah, yes. The other 18 came afterwards through other prophets.
Prophecies after prophecy.
Yeah. Now the reason why they divide into these 3 categories called Tanakh, Torah, Nevi'im, Ksuvim, is because the Torah, right, stands for the 5 books. That was a word by word dictation from God to Moses. So God went and he dictated to Moses, write the word Bereshis, he wrote the word Bereshis. Write the word Bara, he wrote the word Bara. Right? It's actually the Torah, the Torah, we have here, we said the Torah, this book, this is the word by word dictation from God to Moses. Okay? The prophets and sacred writings were written by prophets, right? Or through divine inspiration, that the prophet got the prophecy, and then when they got the prophecy,
He wrote it down.
then when the prophecy left them, right? Sometime afterwards, they would sit down and write in their own words. They would write the prophecy that they had just received.
Now, what is a prophet? Prophet means a teacher.
No. A prophet. Actually, it's interesting. A prophet comes right. How do you say? Anyone know how you say prophet in Hebrew?
The V.
Navi. Good. Excellent. Do you know what the word Navi actually means?
Clever.
What?
Clever?
No.
Is it
Chachma means clever, but what does the word Navi mean?
Navi. I don't know.
I'll give you a hint. You see it in the Torah when Moses says, "I can't go down to Pharaoh because he can't speak." That God says to Moses, "And Aaron, your brother, Yehiyah will be Nivi Echa." Right, the word from the word Navi. The word Navi means spokesman. So a Navi is what we call a prophet, is God's spokesman
Nice.
or spokeswoman, right? They go ahead and they are telling us what God is telling us, right? That's what a Navi is, right? A Navi is God's spokesman, who's going ahead and who is right speaking over, right? Is giving over God's word. But the difference between the Nevi'im and Ksuvim and the Torah is a word-by-word dictation from God to Moses. So it's all of God's words, exact words. The prophets and sacred writings, God gave the prophet the word, right, the vision, right, the message, and then later on the prophet sat down and wrote down the message.
No. Let's say somebody wants to become the most holiest person in the world.
Yeah?
What books does he have to study to get to
Okay,
that point?
so first of all, what do you mean, let's say? Your job is to become the most holiest person in the world. I mean, they're right, okay, if you don't think that that's your job, then go, then check out, my friend, you're missing the point. Right, all of our jobs is to become the most holiest person on this world, right, on this planet. That's why we're here. We're here to become holy, we're here to become godly. That's our job, right? And if we do and we serve God, right, with sincerity and trying to do the best that we can do, and then at that point in time, we go ahead and we become, right? That's how things go ahead, and that's how you become, right? That's how you become holy. That's how you become fantastic, right? That's where you go ahead and you become great.
Are we in the beginning of this process? I mean, what are we supposed to? When do we get to the Tanakh? When do we get to the other books and everything else?
These other classes.
But this is so much to study.
Oh, it is a lot to study.
It's a lifetime.
It is. It's more than a lifetime.
So how did people become Navim? How did
Is it how did they study and studied and studied?
But they also had to read. They also had
Yeah,
to
they
follow,
did.
also had to eat,
They
also
did,
had
and
to
then
bow down to kings and queens and whatever.
and so God, it's interesting. It says at the end of the day, Moses went up the mountain for 40 days and 40 nights to study, and he kept on learning it and forgetting it, learning and forgetting it, learning and forgetting it, and then at the end of the 40 days, God just said, "You know, Moses, you've done such good work. You know, here's a chip." Boop. And he downloaded him. He gave it to him as a present. That he went ahead and he went ahead and he at that point in time, right? He goes ahead and he gave it to him as a present, right? So the answer is we do our best, right? And then God hopefully will give it to us as a present, right? That's our job, right? Our job is to do our best, is to learn the best that we can, right? And then at that point in time, when we learn the best that we can, then God will give it to us as a present. Okay, so.
I think he wants to be a prophet.
Yeah, no, we all want to be a prophet, but I will tell you something. I'll tell you a little secret.
No prophet.
Prophecy stopped 2,300 years ago, roughly. Okay?
But life was simpler then?
Life was simpler. No, life was. Let me tell you something. Life is. I'm going to explain to you what life is. Listen very carefully. I'll give it to you in one sentence. Our job, we're born. Our job is to become godly. Then there's an evil inclination that tries to stop us from being godly. And our job is to not to listen to the evil inclination, but to listen to God and do the right thing. That's all God, all the time. It hasn't changed in the last 5,778 years. Nothing has changed about that formula. You know, the evil inclination might dress a little differently today than it did then, right? Because he probably dresses in each time with the clothing of that time. Right? But nothing else has changed. It's a pretty straightforward process. Right? Our job is to become the best that we can become, right? To avoid all those temptations and to go ahead to become godly.
Why did prophecy stop? Is it because
Why did prophecy stop? So prophecy stopped because what happened was, at this point in time, okay, or right, at this point in time, what happened was idolatry was so rampant in the Jewish people that we began to become we were hooked on it, and we couldn't get rid of evil and of idolatry. And what happened was the great sages got together, and they ordered the evil inclination to show up.
This is the Sanhedrin?
The Sanhedrin.
Yeah.
Okay, and the evil inclination shows up. And the
sweet devil himself?
right. And they say we're going to lock you up. And they lock him up. But then nothing grew. The world didn't function because there was no evil inclination. So they said, okay, we can't do this. So instead they went and they blinded the evil inclination, which took away the passion for idolatry. Now once we took away the passion for idolatry, the world always has to remain in a balance, this yin and the yang, this pull for good and the pull for bad. Like Star Wars. You have the dark side and the light side, okay, right? That are there pulling on us, and our job is to follow, right, to become godly. And so what happens is we go ahead and we have this struggle between the two. Are we going to become godly? We're going to follow the evil inclination, right? And then at that point in time, we have that challenge. What are we going to do? Which way are we going to go, right? And then we have to choose to do the right thing. But now, since we gave up, we blinded the pull for idolatry, which was a terrible counterweight for being bad. We had to give up the counterweight to idolatry. What's the counterweight to idolatry? Prophecy. Why are these two connected? Why are these the two ends of the same rope?
Because they're complete opposites. One
No,
can
the
go to the farthest of the worst, and one is prophecy from God that brings you to your bed.
The prophets were constantly warning about the dangers of idolatry.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, you've got people on one side, and they were looking so far ahead. I mean, they didn't prophecy for next week. I mean, they were looking many years ahead. They could see. So well,
What was the job of a prophet?
Is to give a message from God message to
What type of message? What was God talking to the
God
Jewish people about?
being godly and not
Study Torah.
So you guys really are like the real cerebral types of people. You know, let me tell you something. Let me tell you what God would send his prophets down to tell the Jewish people. You know why God created prophets? Because if you lost your donkeys and didn't know where they went, you would go to the local prophet and say, "Can you please help me find my donkeys? It's very important to me. I need my donkeys. I need my sheep." And the prophet would say, "Okay, let me see if God will tell me where they are." And he would try to get into prophecy, and God would either tell him where your donkeys were, where they weren't. The job of the prophet was to help out the Jewish people.
He'd have a little bit to drink, and he'd allow to have some music. And
Yeah, I'm not sure drinking. He would have music, right? He would have music, and he would
But
go
no
to
drinking.
elevate himself into a spiritual level where he would be open for prophecy, and then God either would or wouldn't give him the prophecy. But God cares about the Jewish people. He cares about our money.
So
And he wants to make sure we know where to do it.
Then use alcohol to get it.
I don't think so. I don't think that. I have to take a look. I don't think they were allowed to use alcohol.
So the prophecy stopped basically because the evil was so much around that they had to do something about it.
They had to do something right, so they got rid of that.
They had
The-
no choice.
so now I'm going to explain to you why the yin and the yang, why they're the balance. It's a very unbelievable idea. The prophecy, the yin and the yang, right? Holding on to these two pieces, right? Right? What is prophecy? Prophecy is a person working on themselves. So they become so spiritually connected. They become so spiritually great that at that point in time they become close to God, and through the tremendous hard work, right, and labor of becoming godly, they become close to God, and God will appear to them or will not, or will not appear to them. Do you know what idolatry is? Idolatry is saying, we will give you the flavor of a connection to a higher being or a higher power without you putting in any work. It's like you're getting the candy without working for it.
We're back to the brother shame issue.
That was idolatry. And idolatry is come taste this exhilarating experience of connecting to the divine, but without you working on it at all. Without you putting effort without you accomplishing anything.
You have to earn it.
You have to earn it.
Yeah.
And so that's what prophecy is. Prophecy is by you working on yourself and becoming great, right? And pushing yourself to become great. So then at that point in time, then you will merit to create a relationship with God. If you get rid of idolatry, which is now the fake pleasure, you have to give up the real pleasure on the other side. And that's why there is no more idolatry. There's no more prophecy today. And the last book to be written is the book of Esther. Right? The last of the 24 books that we have is the book of Esther. Right? And it was right. That's the last book to be written in our written Torah.
So the prophecy stuff basically also because the future generations who are coming after them and the prophecy stuff were not worthy of it.
Not a question of worthy. We lost the pull for idolatry, so we had to lose the positive side of it. Right? And so now, and that's why these two are connected, therefore both had to go away.
And prophets were chosen on the basis of their merit, how good they are. Not everyone
Prophets
is
were
good.
chosen on the basis of their righteousness.
Righteousness.
Right? I mean, you read it, a prophet had to be a prince of a person, just incredible in attributes, incredible behavior, incredible, right, midos, right, never sinning, his heart and head just attached to God, right, being in this incredible place of connection to God. And that didn't guarantee you that you get prophecy. Right? God either would or wouldn't tell you. There was only one person who had the bat phone.
Moses.
Are you familiar with the bat phone?
The what?
The bat phone.
Yeah, that was Moses.
Like Batman,
Moses.
the hot rod, right? Okay, right. That was Moses, right? You had the bat phone, right? That was the hotline. That's the red phone, right? That you go ahead and able to, right? Be able to pick up the phone and call God. There's only one prophet, one prophet that could pick up the phone and talk to God whenever he wanted to, and that was Moses.
And God would answer.
He
picked up.
Every other prophet could prepare for prophecy, ask for prophecy, and God would either, yea or nay, do it or not. Right? But it had to be, right? It had to be through you preparing yourself, and then God either would. The only one who God would talk to, pick up the phone and talk to, was Moses. Yes.
So the days of prophecy is basically finished.
Correct.
It's done.
After that, basically we had the rabbis and the rabbis and whatever that they took over, and they kind of passed on whatever they had learned during generations.
Well, if you actually think about it, what's quite fascinating is...
Let me just finish.
Okay, yeah, go ahead, yeah.
How is it that during prophecy time, when someone made a mistake, the punishment was so harsh, and today's time we do so much sins and so many bad things, and we're still alive, we're still doing.
Okay, so this is what I'll tell you. It's the dumbing down of the generations. When you're playing around with 48,000 watts of electricity, what happens? What happens when you make a little tiny mistake?
You get zapped.
You're toast. Right? You know electricity, right? We have 110 volts in our what happens if you put a fork into your socket?
You get stunned.
You get shocked. Do you die? No. Now some of our outlets are 220. What happens if you put a fork into a 220 volt?
You get
Takes
knocked
you
out.
3 weeks to quit hurting.
Right? But you don't die. You should know those, on the telephone poles that are outside, the ones that have the 3 wires running along the top, you know what volts those are? Those are only 660 volts. But be careful, because if you touch it, you blow your arm off. If you don't get killed, you blow your arm off. Now, if you go out to those high tension wires, those big things out in the fields with those things, right?
You become ashes.
You become right. You die immediately.
No, brother,
Immediately, you
die.
are dead.
You don't die immediately. You become ashes.
And you become ashes. Okay, right? You become sizzled, gone. Goodbye, Charlie. It was nice knowing you. The higher the voltage you're playing with, the higher the risk. Right? What is the so therefore, going back, so when there's prophecy and you have all this revelation of God, so then at that point in time you do something wrong, zap, you're dead. God has dumbed it down. Save our lives. Right? So now we don't go ahead and we don't get zapped the same way. And that's kind of what happens. Right? That's the piece that happens. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
But beside the prophecy, you know, God still performing a miracle on an everyday basis that we have. When you pay attention, you can get the message.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you something fascinating, right? The Talmud asked the question, right? Because what was the job of the prophet?
To give the message from convey to the people.
What message?
God's
Message of God.
message.
Right? Where's my donkeys? Where did I put my keys? And as well as telling us what's the right thing to do, right? Once the prophecy ended, right? So now, who took over that job of telling us the right thing, what to do?
Rabbi.
Rabbis. So the Talmud asked the following question: is it better to have a rabbi, or is it better to have a prophet?
Rabbi,
Rabbi.
you need rabbi any.
Okay, is it better to have a rabbi, or is it better to have a prophet?
Both.
Rabbi.
Okay, if you think it's a prophet, raise your hand. If you think it's a rabbi, raise your hand.
Both.
Okay, if you could only have one, what would you rather have, a rabbi or a prophet?
Rabbi.
Why would you rather have a rabbi?
Because he can tell me what's the right thing to do.
Because
But that's a prophet do the same thing.
Yeah, but see, a prophet would give you the answers to your biggest questions, and you didn't really have to make that strong connection with God because you could go to your prophet. Your rabbi gives you the moral compass, but you still have to do the work to have a relationship with God and be more godly.
Okay, okay. I would say that if both a prophet and a rabbi, you have to do that, right? You have to put in the work. But the Talmud says a rabbi is more important. Why? Because if you go to your prophet and you ask your prophet a question, is it guaranteed that he's going to get the answer?
No.
No. So only if God's talking to him, right? If he had sinned that day, I'm not sure that God would be talking to him. So you wouldn't get an answer. A rabbi, right? So he has the wisdom of the Torah, and he's reflecting to you the wisdom of the Torah, so that he has 24/7 at his fingertips. The right rabbi, of course. Right? Meant to go to a great rabbi, right? But that's what it is, right? That's why a rabbi is better than a prophet, because a prophet would only give you if God would talk to him. Right? A rabbi could tell you what God wants from you, period, across the board.
Rabbi, which rabbi are we talking about now? The real rabbi that has a connection with God.
Right.
That's different. So we have the name rabbis today, nowadays, that they can say, well, God created the world, but I just don't believe that God has a power to do it.
Correct.
We place them in another category.
Correct.
So we're talking about a rabbi like Rabbi Epstein, right?
You're stuck with me, but no, I'm talking about Torah rabbis, right? Rabbis that have studied Torah and studied Talmud and have the ability, right, to be able to learn from it the lessons that we need to learn, right? And that's what it needs. It certainly has to be somebody who believes in God and believes in Torah, that God gave us the Torah, and Talmud, oral law, that stuff's got to be there. Remember that's clear, but it has to happen. Yeah.
Well, what he just mentioned makes me wonder. There are rabbis. Well, there are men out there who have the name rabbi.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought it was my understanding that, when you decided to become a rabbi, you had a lifelong journey of many, many years of studying to proving yourself
Right.
worthy to go out and help the souls of all the Jews.
Right.
But obviously, is that not the case? Because there are people out there who call themselves rabbis that.
And so that's what Frank was
I mean,
saying.
they're
Is that you have to look. You have to look. I'll give you an example. The example I like to use. We have a few doctors here, so let's ask the doctors. Could anyone call themselves a doctor?
No.
Yes.
Anyone can call himself a doctor.
Doctor. Anyone could call himself a doctor. Does that make him that they can heal you?
No.
No. And what happens? What do you call those doctors that go ahead and they print out they print out. Today I feel like I'm a doctor, so could I print out a paper and put up that I'm a doctor?
We call them quacks.
I'm calling quacks, right? Right? Why? Because they're quacks, right? It means they don't have the studying and the learning and the training behind it to be the doctor, right? And you look at a doctor, you always what's the first question you want to ask? What's your credentials, right? Right?
Nobody asks that question.
Nowadays, the
They
insurance
look at
company
their
just
diplomas on
decides.
the wall.
They look at diplomas, right? But usually they're there because they got referrals, right? That's exactly what happens, right? Is that, and so with rabbis, you have the exact same thing. And people that go ahead and they decide today I'm feeling like being a rabbi, and they're going to print out a certificate and say, okay, I'm a rabbi.
I'll mail
But
you
they
one for
have like their
$10.
own synagogues
Plus
and
shipping and
things.
handling.
I mean, how does that?
No, so the answer is it's sad. It's sad. There's not a lot of quality control, and then that was what Frankie's point.
So
That you have to be careful that you get a rabbi who knows his stuff.
So rabbis, like anything else, I mean, the doctors or engineers, they might have the same training, finish the same yeshiva, but their qualities and abilities are different.
Correct.
One is more talented than
Yeah,
the other.
You know, it's
expert,
like the
yeah.
story of what do you call the person who graduated last in his medical school class?
From what school?
What do you call the person who graduated last?
in his medical
His
school
medical school
class?
class,
Doctor, right?
right?
If not that, then you go to...
Right, and so there's right, so that's you want to make sure your points are very valid. And you want to make sure.
Name as a rabbi and got their diplomas and everything.
Well, you have to know where it's from, and you have to and also like
But abilities are different.
yeah, sure.
But what about the reduction of the life, the years of life? It happened before or after the flood?
The what? A reduction? No, that was before the
Before
flood.
the flood was
Well, I have to tell you, yeah.
220
But I mean, the God, it kind of ratcheted down
from 800
from 1,000, right?
1,000.
Right.
Because they didn't do the right
Yeah.
job with the years they were given.
Right. Okay, so back to our story. So now we understand why Achashverosh makes the party in the year number 3. Now we understand why Mordechai said, no go, right? You can't go, right? Now let me ask you all a question. Why? How many times is God's name mentioned in the Megillah?
None.
Only when it says
10 chapters.
None.
And when
There's
it says,
only
only
one
when it
that
says the
king.
king. The
How
king
many?
is God.
How many times is God's name mentioned?
Like,
It's not. God's name is not mentioned. Is it not strange that one of the 24 books of the Torah, not once is God's name mentioned? Not once.
because God is hidden.
God's the chief protagonist in this without ever appearing.
Right? I mean, imagine that, right? How could God's name not be mentioned? So some of you already learned. The answer is God's name is not mentioned in the Megillah because the entire story of the Megillah is one long story of God running the world behind a mask. Okay?
Which is what's
God
going
is
on
hidden.
today.
Right? God is hidden. And if I wanted to make and what do they call the sitcom, like not a sitcom, you know what are the TV shows they show every afternoon, How the World Turns or whatever they're called?
Soap opera.
Soap operas. If I had to write a soap opera, the story of the Megillah is a perfect example of a nice long soap opera. It's just one story that the storyline is just over and over and over again, right? Right? It could be just such a natural story. And yet, what do we Jews say? Don't forget that it's all God, all the time. And the story of the Megillah is one long story where you will not find God's name mentioned once, but everything that takes place is God directing the show. Where is God's name mentioned?
When it says the king.
So if you take a look, whenever the Megillah says the word the king, not the king Achashverosh, because the king Achashverosh, who's the king Achashverosh? Achashverosh, he's a person. Who is the king? Who is the king?
It's God.
That's God.
Then the king conferred with his experts.
Then the king conferred with his experts. Because God now is coming in, right? Anytime it says just the king, it could be understood as the king as Achashverosh, or the king, God. And if you read the story of the Megillah with God's name, every time it says the king as God, it is one heck of an amazing story. Why does God hide himself? Why is God's name hidden?
It's really the term, God had himself, or maybe God was not available, because how come God, the powerful God, can, and I don't the context hide himself.
Why did God hide himself?
Right.
God hid himself.
Uh-huh.
Right? Because we Jews, there's a few, again, remember world history. Remember our own history. You know, world history. How does God run this world?
Like a puppeteer?
Like a puppeteer. And everything that happens to us is God talking to us. And our job in this world
Just to understand.
is to peek through the screen or the mask and say, "Hi, God.
That's so
I see you peeking. Gotcha." Right? God is everywhere.
Like the Disney characters, the Disney movie, when you're a kid, you ever hug them and you saw that you could, their mouth, there'd be a breathing hole and there'd be some college kid in there.
Yeah. Right. So what is it? Because what is it? What happens is that, right? Do you know how you say world?
Olam.
Olam Hazeh is this world. You know what the word olam, world, really means? Nadon is a master, olam of the world. You know what the word world really means? You know what the root of the word olam is? It comes from the word he'elam. He'elam, which means hidden. So you know what the word olam hazeh means? Not this world. Hidden here.
Maybe we back that up again. Sorry, what again?
Okay, the word olam comes from the word he'elam, hidden. He'elam, right? La'aleim is to hide.
That's one of the 210 you said words, right? That have he said with the 210 words and they kind of all.
The roots. Okay, the roots. Right, there are 200 words that are root words that make up the Book of Genesis, but there are more than 200 root words. But the root of the word olam is the word he'elam, which means to hide. Olam hazeh means hidden here. See, the problem is, if God would not be hidden here, but God would be revealed in this world, what would happen?
No free will.
No free will. Why would it demand any free will?
Because we wouldn't be able to make the wrong choice.
We could make the wrong choice. We see God everywhere. Like, how can you make the wrong choice, right? You can do exactly what God tells you to do.
You'll be on your best behavior.
All the time.
All the time.
And you see God wherever you walk. Right? And you wouldn't have free will. And since the purpose of this world...
become like an animal, right?
No. Well, we become like an angel, whatever it is, right? You become... You lose your free will and you just do what God tells you to do. Right? And doing what God tells you to do, right? So then at that point in time, right, you're just a... Nice, you lose you're an angel, right? You lose your free will. So God has to hide himself here. And there's a mask over this world. And all we do, all day, every day, is just to look at the world and say, God.
See God.
God, you were here. God, you were there. What's a greater miracle, the splitting of the Reed Sea or the story of the Purim?
Story of the Purim.
Splitting of the Reed Sea was what we call an open miracle. We were stuck on the edge of the sea. Reeds, Egyptians were kind of cruising after us. We couldn't go forward, and God says, not a problem, press the button. Water splits, Jewish people go through, Egyptians try to follow, they get drowned. Right? Okay. Right? That was the miracle of the splitting of the Red Sea. Bang, you saw God.
Miracle for free.
Right? Right?
Free miracle.
Free miracle, okay, right, you have it, goes, right, splitting the Red Sea. The story of the Megillah is the story of God hiding himself in everyday actions of the world, which is much tougher to do, because you got to make sure that everybody's free will sort of intertwines and interacts and creates this perfect harmony or this perfect storyline. Everyone's doing what they're supposed to be doing at which point in time. It's a dance of God arranging everybody's free will to intersect and interact in every way that they should at every single point in time.
So they earn the miracle.
So the miracle at that point in time becomes, right? We're seeing God, right? We're going ahead, right? But you have to look for Him. And a hidden miracle is greater in that aspect than a revealed miracle. And the entire story of the Megillah is one long story of a hidden miracle unfolding. And you can sleep right through it, and your soap opera just will continue on.
So Hanukkah was also a hidden miracle, right?
Hanukkah?
Yeah, it's a covert miracle.
Hanukkah was a miracle of, right? What happened on Hanukkah, right? Right. Again, it depends how covert you want to say it. Right? It means 13 people going ahead and 13 Maccabees going and take on the mighty Greek army and beating them. I don't know what you want to call that. Right? But in the Megillah, the whole story of Purim is just one long hidden miracle. And that is why God's name is hidden in here too. And we celebrate the idea of it all being hidden. That's why in Purim we do some strange things. Why do we dress up on Purim?
I don't know.
Well, because we're emulating what God did.
And what are we saying? Don't look at my mask, look behind the mask. Don't think I'm this guy, I'm really this guy. Why do we eat Hamantashen?
To eat the hat of Haman?
Come on. Why do we eat Hamantashen?
I have no idea.
And no, that's that answer never made any sense to me. Why do we eat Hamantashen? Because Hamantashen, you look at, they're all closed. It looks like a piece of dough. You crack it open, and what's inside?
Jelly.
All the yummy stuff, right? Right? Again, it's hidden, right? You look at it from the outside, it looks one way. You crack it open, and it's all different. Right? It's all about revealing the hidden. Right? Purim is all about, don't take things at face value, because then you're going to miss the real story.
Right.
And we don't want you to miss the real story, because you're going to miss God.
Yeah.
And the whole story of Purim is the story of not missing the real story. Don't take it at face value, right? Go deep down and look and see what's behind it. When you look and you see what's behind it, then at that point in time you could go ahead and you could really get it. Right? You following? Right? That's really what's taking place. Right? That's the piece that's really going through. Right? As we're getting ahead, we're understanding that there's a much deeper presence behind it.
I just had a thought. Can I
Yeah.
share it with you?
Sure.
So we're in the desert, we got everything for free.
Right.
God took care of us, our clothes didn't wear out, He gave us food, everything was done for free.
Water from the rock,
Water from the
manna
rock,
from the heaven.
yeah, so,
What about Kollel?
but idolatry is something where we're trying to hark back to what we got for free before. Because idolatry is, they were trying to elevate themselves through this idol.
And that's what it is, trying to get that sweetness.
But they wanted it for free.
Right.
And that's what the basic contract with God is. You don't get it for free, you got to earn it.
Why do you have to earn it?
Well, Kabbalah, Zohar says that the human soul was created before the universe.
Right.
And it was instantaneously, it received it had two attributes. One, it was united because it was one.
Mm-hmm.
And two, it received everything instantly from God.
Right.
And God is the ultimate giver, so it received everything, including a knowledge of what it'd be like to create, to share, to love, to earn, to do all the
Right.
things that make us holy in this world. And it couldn't do any of those things. So
Mhm.
it had, in the language of branches, it says it had a lack. In our language, it had a cathartic breakdown.
So it was missing.
It was missing. It couldn't.
The
do these
reason
things.
why we are here in this world is so that we can earn our relationship with God.
Exactly.
So we have to make those choices.
And are the idols, or what you're saying too, is that if you're thinking the idol concept is more like a whole, like, just bring some flowers and rub the stomach of the genie and they'll give you what you want kind of thing, you know what I mean?
No. It's just, it's idolatry is just give me God without any work.
Yeah.
Right? I can do whatever I want, and we don't realize that the whole purpose,
They got a bunch of them. so
the whole reason we're here in this world is to work and to create that relationship with God and to make those choices.
But it's
The right
also, it's also a separating thing, because what you're doing is worshiping the handiwork of man and not the handiwork of God.
Right, okay.
So it separates us from God.
But again, right,
Even though
again,
we want to be closer,
Right.
but because we didn't earn it, we're actually,
Right. Now it's fascinating because we go ahead and we point to all these things, say God, 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 God. What does Amalek, what does Haman, who is a descendant of Amalek, what does he say about all these things?
no God.
What?
Bah humbug.
Right. He said, He said, that's coincidence. It's all coincidence.
It just happened.
So what do we do when we have the grogger?
We
We say erase Haman. Because it's not coincidence, it's God. You're calling God coincidence is the biggest insult to God. Right? That's why, whenever you hear the name Haman, you make noise. Scratch it out. Because Amalek is saying, that's just dumb luck. Man, you got saved. Watch, amazing. The sea split. Aren't you lucky? The wind. It was a stormy night. Aren't you glad? Right? The sea just happened to split. Because what does Haman say? It's all coincidence.
Or there's some scientific way that they.
Right. It's all nature. It's all nature. It has nothing to do with anything else. It's all nature. That's what they go ahead. That's what they're saying. It's all nature. Right?
the creation of the universe just happened.
Just happened, right? The creation it just happened. You're lucky. The law of thermodynamics says the world goes from order to disorder, not from disorder to order. And how did the world of order pop out of the world of disorder? It happened. Dumb luck. Right? The Google mount the universe, and we just happen to be the lucky one. Right? You understand what they're saying? What is Haman saying? Amalek is saying, right? Because Haman is from Amalek. It's all luck. What's the name of our holiday? What do we call the name of this holiday? What's it called? Purim. Do you know what the word Purim means? Lots. It's a lottery. Isn't that a strange name to call a Jewish holiday? We're calling it lottery? Can you imagine calling Mega Millions? Powerball, excuse me. Powerball, right? Called Powerball. What holiday? We have a holiday called Powerball. Right? That's what, right, for right? That's what we're calling our holiday. It's called Powerball. Isn't that a weird name to call our holiday?
Yeah, it is.
If you would ask me the name, what name would you have picked for this holiday? Mordechai, Esther, right? Right? They would have picked something along those lines. Right? We're calling it a holiday. I'm calling it Powerball. You know why we call it Powerball? Powerball is the perfect rejection of Haman. When Haman decided to kill the Jews, how did he decide which day he was going to kill the Jews?
Pulled lots.
He pulled a lot. He made a lottery. He said, "Let's see what coincidence has to say." Oh, look at that! It came out to the month of Adar. That's the day it's the month that Moses died. Perfect. It's a great month to kill the Jews.
It's also the month he was born.
It's also the month that Moses was born, and he didn't know that little piece of information. Right? Goes ahead, right? And right, he goes ahead. He pulls out. Right? And what are we Jews going to name the holiday? Exactly. You're poor. your lottery that you think is just dumb luck, do you know what we call it? We call it all God, all the time. And we're going to name our holiday Purim to show you that it's all about everything that just happens is really God saying, hi, I see you. Peekaboo, I see you. Right? And that's the holiday of Purim. The holiday of Purim, you walk around and you should see God everywhere. Every step along the way, it's all God, all the time, just saying, hi.
There is no such thing as coincidence.
There's no such thing as coincidence. And he read, somebody read, how does God sign his name? Coincidence.
Can I ask you a question real quick before I forget? What is it, and this has to do with this topic, but you know the pagans and the idol worshippers, right? You know, they do the magic. You even see it throughout the Torah, where, you know, not throughout every chapter, but, you know, you see as an example is when Moses and the magicians from the Pharaoh came out and they did, to a certain extent, they could emulate those little miracles, right? Okay, so we know that this isn't a god, right? Or whatever idol creation that they pray, right? But the power behind some of that stuff.
I'll select this. Okay. So I'll tell you very interesting. Maimonides says that all that stuff was just sleight of hands. There's no such thing. It's all sleight of hands.
What does Rashi say on that? Because I can't.
So I'll tell you what I think Rashi says. Rashi says those things exist.
Yeah, but like magic arts.
Magic, right? But the source of it is black magic.
Yeah, like the manipulating.
The source. Remember we talked about the good guys, right? The light and the dark side.
Yeah.
Right. So they were tapping into the dark side, and using that as a way to try to get us to forget about God.
Or maybe going into the back of the computer and like putzing with it in a way that they shouldn't be doing because we're not God, we screw it up.
Right. So it's called. It actually is quite fast.
One of the puppet things.
I'll explain to you. I'll explain to you like this. What is God's name? What is God's name?
Yud K Vav K.
Okay, so the answer is he's got a lot of names. God's got a lot of names. Adonai, Elohim, right? El, Shaddai. Right? God's got lots of names, right? Okay. Why does God have lots of names? How many gods are there? One. So why does he have many names?
Different attributes.
Different attributes, right? They're reflecting different attributes. Right?
He's got lots of attributes.
Right? So what does Adonai stand for? God of mercy. And Elohim, what does Elohim stand for?
God of judgment.
God of justice. Right? Justice. Now, there's a problem with the word Elohim. A very big problem. Anytime a Hebrew word ends in a Yud and a Mem, it's plural. So how could God's name be Elohim? Gods, when God has anything but plural.
Yeah, he's indivisible.
He's indivisible. So how do you have anything not like that?
Huh. Good question, Rabbi.
Well, it's just a reference to his many attributes, but he's still just one.
So let me show you how this works. Okay? Here we go. Okay, so it goes like this. Here is the world. Okay? Here's the world. Okay? What happens is you have many powers that affect the world. Right? What would be some examples of these powers? Sunshine, sun. What else? Rain, moon, fire, wind.
Yes.
Right? Right? They have lots of powers. Right? Each of these power centers. Right? Okay? The word El means power. Aleph Lamed. Right? Aleph Lamed is written like this. Aleph Lamed. Right? The word Elohim is written Aleph Lamed Hey Yud and a Mem. Okay? Right? Okay? That's Elohim. That's Yud and the Mem. Right? So that's right. That's plural. Right? This red Yud and a Mem is always plural. Okay? So it says like this. We say there's a world over here. And there are many powers. A person looking up and looking up at all these powers, what could he say? Each of these powers is a god, right? Each of these powers is a god, right? Here's the sun god, the moon god, the star god, the fire god, the wind god, the water god, right? You have all these different gods, because all these powers. You know what we say? We say like this. We say, God, you are Elohim. You are the source of all these powers. All these powers, where do they get their power from?
God.
From God. And so God, you are Elohim. You are the source of all these powers. When you look up, you say, well, look at all these powers. Each one has their own ability, their own power, right? Their own source. And therefore we worship each one of them. Each one is an idol by itself. And we Jews say, no. God, you're Elohim.
Well,
You are the source of all those powers. All those powers, really, God, is just you.
El is also a name of God, isn't it?
Right, and that's what I'm saying. El is power.
Yeah.
But you say the word Elohim because what we're saying is, God, you are the source of all those powers that exist. There's nothing outside of you. Right? Everything is just you. And that's what it means when we say, God, you are Elohim. That you're the source of all those powers. There's nothing that exists outside of you. It's all part of you. Right? And that's what it is.
Yeah, I think we should have a clear understanding about those things since
Yeah.
the Torah say that God created all those things. So he said, I don't see why people, if you know that God created those things, God created sun, created moon, created, so automatically he's the source.
Right.
And I don't why people worship a moon, and you want to say don't worship any of the creature. You have to worship the creator.
Right.
Right. So, what draw people to worship those
powers? The answer is that we don't like having one God who's in charge. Or really, the truth is, I'll tell you where idolatry came from. It's actually quite fascinating.
God for everything. They got Hindus have
God for everything.
gods that people on their planet.
Where does idolatry come from? I'll explain to you really where it comes from. You know where idolatry came from? Idolatry came from because people began to look at the world and they began to see that bad things are happening to good people. Or good things happening to bad people. So people said, how could that be? If there's one God who's this all-powerful, all in control, all merciful, why is there a good God and why is there a bad God? Right? Why is good things happening to bad people and bad things happening to good people? That's terrible.
So we've divided God.
So what we said was, well, it must be. So because of this conflict between the good God and the bad guy, right? Whatever, these good things happening to bad people, bad things happening to good people, we said there must be these two gods that are up there and are fighting. And sometimes the good God wins, sometimes the bad God wins. And therefore, once you have two gods, then you can have many gods. So that's where idolatry comes from. Right? Idolatry comes from, right, this conflict between the good God and the bad God.
Why do good things happen to bad people?
Why do good things happen to bad people? And so we Jews say, what do we Jews say? It's all God, all the time. And where do we say this? I'm going to tell you, I'm going to explain to you one of the most powerful statements we make that you probably never understood what you're saying. What is the most famous phrase in Judaism?
Shema Yisrael.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. You don't want to translate that verse for me?
Hear God, God, God.
Hear, O Israel, God,
God.
God, God is one.
One.
Is that not just a bizarre statement?
No, not when you break it down, though, because
So the answer is like this. Shema Yisrael, Hear, O Israel, Adonai, God of mercy, Eloheinu, God of justice. Seemingly a conflict. Right? Seemingly there's a God of mercy, God of justice. Sometimes bad things happen, sometimes good things happen. Sometimes the good God wins, sometimes the bad God wins. There's a conflict. Adonai Echad. It's one and the same God. Which one?
One.
Adonai, God of mercy.
And God.
Mercy and justice is all one God, the God of mercy. Because justice is only here to serve the greater good of God of mercy. And that's what you say when you say Shema tonight. Okay, for the first time in your life, you're going to understand what you're really saying. Shema Yisrael, Adonai, God of mercy, Eloheinu, God of justice. This conflict of good things and bad things. Right? I don't understand if God, if you're always so good, why did something happen? Adonai Echad, you are the one God, all merciful. That's what you're saying when you're saying Shema Yisrael. We're saying, right, we're saying that your whole reason that you're denying this is because you don't understand how God can do this, and therefore you're going to say there are two gods, and once you have two gods, then you could go and have your pantheons of gods. You could have your millions of gods. And what do we say? We say no. We say it's Adonai Echad, it's one God. All the time. Right? And it's all God of mercy. And but what happens if we don't understand it? Why does sometimes bad things happen to good people, good things happen to bad people? Adonai Echad. It's one God. It's a God of mercy, driving it all. Right? And that's what's taking place. Right? And that's right. And so it's really it's kind of saying playing that peekaboo. Right? It's looking at the world and understanding that it's all God all the time. And the story of the Megillah is that whole lesson. And we say the king. To tell you what, the king is always there. He's always watching. He's always taking care of his people. And you, Amalek, you call that coincidence. And we Jews say, it's God. And the story of Purim drives home the lesson that there ain't no such thing as a coincidence. It's all God. It's all the time. And don't forget that. Yes.
In the this Sidur, according to the bedtime Shema.
Mm-hmm.
You know the prayer underneath from the first page is that God will never. He's my king who will never exchange his his law to another law.
Mm-hmm.
And going down you say God will denounce you, O Satan. So where is that the word Satan come from? What is the Satan represent?
No. The word Satan is just the evil inclination. And the evil inclination, right? We call it evil inclination, we call it the Satan, we call it the snake. Right? That is all you see the question like this. How could you ever not listen to God? Are you crazy?
Not to listen to God?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't answer that question.
Somebody.
Okay, right. How could you not listen to God? It's like the most ridiculous thing in the entire world.
I'm a Jew. I listen to God all the time.
Right?
Maybe somebody.
Then that means to do what He wants you to do. Right? How could you not listen to God? Right? I mean, really. The answer is there's something called the evil inclination. And the evil inclination is a very smooth talker. He says, it's time to go to class. But you're tired. You had a long day in the office. And why don't you go home? You deserve to rest. Right? Go put your feet up. Right? Just go home, take a little nap. And then, he'll make you oversleep. And you deserve it. You're good. You're a good guy. Right? So like you know, something along those lines, like why, you know, what's the, you know, what's the big deal? Right? Just relax, you know, just kind of chill out. Who's telling you that? The evil inclination, the Satan, the snake. It's all the same thing. But let me tell you something. If there was no Satan, you couldn't build your relationship with God in this world. You know why? Because of course you listen to God every single time. Right? Right? Because it's a given, and that's what it is. Right? And so it's a given. So you need the evil inclination to say that to you when they say, come on, I know you stories. Right? I'm going to go to class. I'm showing up. Now.
Even though I overslept.
Now listen. Next I'm not going to go to sleep before class. I'll go to sleep after class. Now. Or I'll set my alarm. Okay. So now. That's okay if it doesn't work. You still get rewarded as if you came. Like this, but make sure you set it for PM, not AM. But okay. So now what did the Jews do? If the Jews deserve to die, because they went ahead, and they went to Achashverosh's party, and that's what we said, right? Let's go back now to the beginning. That's why they deserve to die. What did they do in order to be saved?
They fasted for 3 days.
They fasted for 3 days.
They prayed.
They had a return of spirituality.
In return of spirituality, they prayed.
They accepted the Torah.
Tshuva.
They fasted the 3 days before or after?
No, they fasted the 3 days. They fasted was when Haman signed the decree for Achashverosh that Jewish people are going to be destroyed. So what happened was the Jewish people had, right? Mordechai goes to Esther and says, you got to go into the king. And she says, I can't go into the king, I'm going to get killed. And Mordechai gives her one of the greatest speeches ever.
I like it.
One of the greatest speeches. And who knows if for this time you were brought into the king. Means the whole story of you being taken into the king is a crazy story. You're a Beis Yaakov girl. What are you doing with a Goyish king who's a glutton pig? But Mordechai says, maybe this is the reason. And by the way, I just want to tell you parenthetically, if you don't go in, the Jewish people are going to be saved anyway. Right? Somebody else will save the Jewish people, and you will walk off the pages of Jewish history.
Yeah.
Right? You won't be anymore. You'll be disappeared.
Wait, what happened? Back that again.
Mordechai says to Esther, you got to go into the king. You got to speak to the king. And she says, but I can't go to the king. I haven't been called in 30 days. If you walk into the king without him putting his scepter down, he'll kill you. So she says, I'll find the opportune time. And Mordechai says to her, yeah, no, honey, now's the time. This is your chance. Jewish history is riding on your shoulders. Your whole existence is for this point in time. And by the way, I'm not worried about the Jewish people, because the Jewish people will be saved. But I'm worried about your Olam Haba. I'm worried about your world to come, because you will have existed and not fulfilled the purpose of why you were here. Mm-hmm. And what does she say to Mordechai? Reporting for duty. I'm ready to go in.
Fast for 3
but
days.
I need you to get all men, women, and children to come into fast for 3 days.
In Shushan.
In Shushan, the capital. Yeah.
So this is how the story basically goes. Ahasuerus puts a party for 180 days. He thinks he has conquered the world.
Right.
He has conquered the God.
And God is
he's going
dead.
to blame.
Right.
He's the winner, basically.
Right.
So Esther comes to the picture as a queen.
4 years later.
4 years later.
4 years later, he kills Vashti that night. 4 years later, right, he finally gets a new queen named Esther.
So
that's 7 years into his
She
reign.
didn't love him. She just was forced basically to become with to
Correct.
Be with him.
Correct.
She put the mask on.
Yeah.
But the mask started.
What was Esther's name?
Hadassah.
Hadassah. There's one time is her name mentioned. Every other time she's called Esther. Why is she called Esther, not Hadassah?
This is where she has to start.
The name
acting.
Esther means hidden. lahastir. She's called Esther because she was hidden. Right? The whole, right? It's putting the mask on. Let's play it out. Right? Let's fast forward. This is happening. I don't know why. I know God's in charge. I'm going to wait to find out when.
Okay, so this is where Esther comes into the picture.
Right.
And this is where the game starts, basically.
Yeah.
The game starts.
Right.
So Haman basically plans to kill all the Jews, and Mordechai is in the picture as a savior, basically, right?
Right.
And they're both some kind of a senator, some kind of a advisor to the king. And Haman basically decides to destroy the Jews and goes to the Ahasuerus,
Right.
saying to Ahasuerus, okay, this is time to get rid of the Jews.
Right.
The whole picture backfires on him,
Right.
and he dies. But Esther doesn't. She ends up being with Ahasuerus. She ends up having the son.
Yeah.
But she fell in love with him at the end
No.
of the story.
No, of course not.
She never
But
loved
there is
him.
a son.
Correct.
She has a boy with him.
She couldn't fight him.
She did her duty.
She
She
was obligated.
no one obligated. Ahasuerus was the king. You kill her.
Well, that was the obligation. If she didn't do
She
it,
got
said,
killed.
It's off with her head.
So the Jewish people are saved.
Right.
When Haman dies,
Right.
Ahasuerus becomes crazy and starts eating grass.
No. That was Nebuchadnezzar. That was his great grandfather.
Okay, so what happens to Ahasuerus?
He dies the next year.
He dies the next year.
Yeah, he's
But
gone.
Esther becomes a prophet. Esther is a prophet. At this
She's a prophetess already.
So she ends up having the kingdom. What happens to Esther afterward? What happens to the son? What happens
The
to
son becomes king of the entire Persian Empire.
Yeah. How
There
was
he is
the
too.
only- How
Well,
was
is
he
this
when
a
he
complete
became
Jewish
king?
life, or is this basically the mask continues until the Cyrus?
And
basically?
that's a great question. When everyone finds out that Esther is the queen, you should know. We come to the story of Esther, and it's an amazing story. Right? We're kind of happy. We're glad it's an amazing thing. The story of Esther, to me, is one tragedy.
Just one more question I want to
Yeah,
ask you.
okay.
Joseph's story has a good ending. Esther's story has a good ending, but we're still in Galut. We still have.
No. So what happened was King Ahasuerus dies. Darius II becomes the king. He lets the Jews go back to Israel and build the second
And
temple.
we fail again.
But 420 years later.
There was a backstory about with Haman and Mordecai.
Right.
They had a-
Okay, hold on one second. We're running out of
I
time.
know, I'm here.
Okay.
We failed.
Okay, but hold on. Let's just look at this. What did the Jewish people do to merit
Death.
them? No, we said to merit death was they went to the party.
Okay.
What did they do in order to merit to be saved?
They prayed.
They fasted for 3 days.
They
Great.
accepted Torah.
They got together, all of them.
Yeah.
Cry out.
Okay.
So I want to tell you something fascinating. You have to pay attention. When Haman comes to the king and says this nation deserves to be killed, what does Haman say?
They're divided.
Yesh am echad mifuzar umufarad.
They're here and there.
And then I'll show you. Turn to this. It's too good to miss it. Okay, turn to page 1255. Chapter 3, verse number 8.
1255?
1255. Okay, chapter 3, verse number 8.
The
Okay.
Haman said to king,
Achashverosh.
There's a certain people scattered abroad and dispersed among the peoples in all the provinces of your realm. Their laws are different from every other people's. They do not observe even the king's laws. Therefore, it is not befitting the king to tolerate them. If it pleases the king, let it be recorded that they be destroyed, and I will pay 10,000 silver talents into the hands of those who perform the duties for deposit in the king's treasury.
Go ahead.
I want to read more. So the king took his signet ring from his hand and gave it to Haman, the son of Amatha the Agagite, the enemy of the Jews. Then the king said to Haman, the silver is given to you, the people also, to do with as you see fit.
Okay, good. Now let's read this very carefully. Let's read this again. Chapter 3, verse number 8. Then Haman said to King Achashverosh, There was a certain people scattered abroad and dispersed among the people in all the provinces of your realm. What does that mean?
They're not united.
They're not united. They are scattered.
That's what I said. That's what I think.
Their laws were different from every other people. They do not observe even the king's laws. What is he saying there?
He's saying
They don't
they
listen.
don't, they don't observe God's laws.
They don't observe the king. Who is the king?
God.
Hashem. They don't listen to Hashem's laws. Therefore, it is not befitting the king to tolerate them. What does that mean?
That's God.
Therefore, God, you shouldn't have them as your chosen people. Wipe them out. If it pleases the king, so if it pleases you, God, let it be ordered that they be destroyed, and I will pay 10,000 silver talents into the hands of those who perform the duties for deposit in the king's treasury. So the king God took his signet ring from his hand and gave it to Haman, the son of Hamdan, then to the Jews. Then the king said to Haman, and God said to Haman, the silver is given to you, people also to do with the use he fit. My friends, what charges did Haman level against the Jewish people?
They are not loyal to God.
Not loyal to God. And they're scattered throughout the kingdom. Let's turn the page. Turn to page 1256.
This is really a great story, Rabbi.
It's an amazing story. I love the
They
story.
are still scattered around.
Oh no, hold on. Verse 15, chapter 4, verse 15, page 1256. What does Queen Esther tell Mordecai?
Go assemble all the Jews to be found in Shushan.
You go ahead, right?
Do not eat or drink for 3 days, night or day. I with my maids will fast also. Then I will go to the king, though it is unlawful. And if I perish, I perish. Mordecai then left and did exactly as Esther had commanded.
So what does Esther say to Mordecai?
Unite.
Go assemble all the Jews
In Shushan.
to be found in Shushan. What do you mean go assemble the Jews? Unite the Jewish
Jews in
people.
Shushan.
This will one of the
Because if you unite
moments-
the Jewish people, then we will win. Because then the king will take care of us.
These very moments when they got united.
Right?
Yep.
So we had to make tshuva and we had to get.
We had to become united. What had the decree rescinded? That we became united. And that's the story of Purim.
So what,
Right here we won.
So what made people believe in Mordecai at the end of the story?
What?
What did people believe in Mordecai?
Why did they?
Uh-huh.
They recognized that he was righteous. And he was God's, and he was ready to lead the Jewish people.
I'm a bit confused.
Yes.
Which the king in these paragraphs is Hashem and which the king
Okay, this is the rule. It could always be read as king, meaning Achashverosh.
Right.
That's the surface story.
Right.
You want to get the real story?
Right.
Every time it just says the king, not the king Achashverosh.
Right.
That the king is God.
Hashem.
Is that the fourth level of understanding?
King Achashverosh. No, this is the basic level. King Achashverosh. Okay, so every time it says the king,
It
there's
says,
a whole other story.
where she says, then I will go into the king, though it's unlawful.
Right, then they'll go into the king, which is what?
Yea, to Hashem.
And they go into Hashem, even though it is unlawful. Why?
She's not supposed to.
Because I'm sinned. I've sinned. I can't appear. It's forbidden to go in front of the king with sackcloth. Forbidden. You have to be happy and jolly when you go speak to God. Right? What is it? I'm going to go into the king when I have sinned. I don't have the right to ask him anything.
So if I perish, I perish.
If I perish, I perish.
How can you-
By the way, can you imagine Queen Esther walking into King Ahasuerus' palace? Right? Like life and death like is going to happen right here. Do you know which word she uses over here? Uvechein, and so I will come. Do you know in Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, all the extra prayers we say in the end of the third blessing? Do you know which word we use? We use to introduce each of the paragraphs.
That word.
That word, uvechein, and so. On Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, we go in front of God. We're using the same word that Queen Esther used. Because we know we're toast. Right? We're walking in and we don't have any really ammunition here, but we're walking in. And we use the same exact word that Queen Esther uses over here. Right, and then you read it. Right, then what does chapter 5 say? Now it came to pass on the Thursday, Esther donned royalty and stood in the inner court of the king's palace, of God's palace, facing God's house, while the God was sitting on his throne, in the throne room facing the chamber's entrance. When God noticed Queen Esther standing in court, she won his favor. The God extended to Esther the golden scepter that was in his hand, and Esther approached and touched the tip of the scepter. God said to her, "What is you, Queen Esther, and what is your petition to me? Half the kingdom shall be granted you." Esther, if it pleases God, let God and Haman come today to the banquet that I prepared for him. Then God commanded, tell Haman to hurry and fulfill Esther's wishes. So God and Haman came to the banquet hall that Esther prepared. Now, why is she inviting God and Haman together? She's saying to God, do you want the Jewish people or do you want Haman?
Are you confused? Slowly, do this again.
Oh, okay. We're out of time. We're going to stop here now. But just whatever it says the king, just read God. But if you read the entire Megillah this way, you'll never read the Megillah again, ever. Ever! So again, let's just do a recap.
That's a highlight.
Okay, let's just again the recap. Number one is we go ahead and we walk into the we walk in and what's happening? We sin because we go to this party that I'm not supposed to go to. He's celebrating the death of God. What do? We become united. We come back to
party.
okay, but we do tshuva. We become united, and that's it. The rest is history. A lot more to be said. A lot more to talk about in Purim. Come visit us in Purim. We'll share with you more Torah thoughts. Or come back tomorrow. There's another story. Oh no, because why? Because what happens when you drink? What's inside comes out. Right? But it's inside.
Are you really getting drunk on Thursday?
Right? What's inside comes out. Right? And when
I'm gonna take off work.
was today.
Do you have any event on Thursday?
Yeah. So we're gonna have a party at Or HaTorah, 1624 at around 6:30. 6:30. Come join us there for the party.
Okay.
All right, everyone have a happy Purim. Again, anyone who wants me to give out money for the poor people, you give me now. And the amount of money you should be giving for each person is roughly the cost of a meal to each of the poor people. So whatever your normal meal is, just kind of means you give to two poor people.
Who are the poor people?